Most people want to start the day off with healthy food, but many people aren't sure what that is. And it's also difficult to know what's appropriate for an individual given current health status and current age. One thing I commonly encounter from talking to patients is that they have a perception that what they're doing in the morning is healthy, yet their labs tell a different story. A common misconception has to do with oatmeal. People intuitively think, okay, oatmeal is a whole grain, so maybe that's a healthy way to start the day. However, what most people don't know is that most of the brands that people commonly buy are highly processed, and as such, are really closer to a starch with a glycemic load as high as bread. So what does this mean? Basically, that a serving of instant oatmeal might increase blood sugar as much as a piece of candy. This gets compounded by the additional misconception that adding a banana to it makes it healthier. It isn't that the banana doesn't have nutrients in it, but a banana is also rather glycemic, starchy, with sugars, and increases glycemic load rather quickly. The two together, sort of a double whammy for your blood sugar. And what you don't want, especially once you get into those middle decades of life, but really any time, are big shifts in blood sugar. Because what you might notice is you have that instant oatmeal with the banana in it, there's a blood sugar increase, and then you feel kind of a crash, maybe an hour later. And beyond that, those blood sugar spikes, they're not good for us. So it's really no mystery why oatmeal has become so popular, because lots of times something that starts off as really healthy, as it gets commercialized, becomes a little less so, a little less so, a little less so in the processing. And that's really what's happened with most commercial oatmeals, particularly instant oatmeals that people very commonly have for breakfast. And again, it's nuanced. It's not that even the instant oatmeal has no nutrients, no fiber. And remember, as we go through those adult decades of life, those continuous spikes in blood sugar that we want to avoid as much as possible are responsible for so much of the aging process. And if we want to age as youthfully as possible, we need to be very thoughtful about the glycemic load of any meal that we eat. So unless you're 25 and this is your recovery meal after running 6 miles, it's best not to start the day with this very common breakfast food. Now, some people who really enjoy the sensation of oatmeal, I tell them to go through the extra step and the extra work of getting real steel-cut oats, having a small serving, and adding to that things that will balance the starch, such as nuts, seeds, and healthy fats. Perhaps putting some olive oil or other type of oil on it. Overall, it's best to start the day with a low glycemic meal. And that can be different for different people and also what your current health status is. Some people have to be very, very cautious about fat because of their lipid profiles, but other people might be okay having an egg, for example. For others, maybe a low-carb vegan protein shake. My personal favorite is a greens-based smoothie. Now, many of my patients push back on the oatmeal thing and say, hey, but there's fiber in the oatmeal and I need fiber throughout the day, don't I? And of course, the answer is yes, we all need fiber. But if we look at how much fiber is in that packet of instant oatmeal compared to how much fiber might be in a smoothie where you put some actual vegetables, night and day. And here's the thing that people often don't get. The best sources of fiber is vegetables. Now, it's fine to have some whole grains, but again, instant oatmeal is barely a whole grain. It's a remnant of a whole grain, and as such, it's very starchy and very glycemic. You have to understand that oats in their whole form, oat groats, which you can buy, are a very different substance than instant rolled oats. Those have been refined. Go ahead and try to get some oat groats at a health food store, and you'll see they're very different. And if you steamed them in the morning with some other whole grains, which could be an option, that would be a very different kind of breakfast. A middle ground between the instant rolled oats and whole oat groats oftentimes is steel-cut oatmeal, which is in more of the form of the whole grain. However, it isn't a 1-minute process to make it in the microwave or adding some hot water to it. A little more work is involved, which is almost always the case when you're preparing a whole grain. An exception might be quinoa, which is very simple to make, low glycemic, but it also is more of a seed-based grain. So when people look for alternatives, I sometimes say, well, how about some quinoa? And to flavor that in different ways. Let's think of the extreme example of this, insulin resistance. What causes that? It's an ongoing dysregulation of the blood sugar system. We're causing spikes in blood glucose. The pancreas has to compensate for that with insulin. Over time, creating insulin resistance as the pancreas has to put out more and more. And when that occurs, we start to notice an increase in the hemoglobin A1C, which is basically an indicator of what blood sugar has looked like in the 3 months prior. And then over time, the insulin you make isn't enough, and that's when we get into diabetic drugs, including insulin. However, even that process aside, those increases in blood sugar are associated with increases in inflammation, oxidative stress, and all the things that age us and make us unwell. So as surprising as it might sound, those of us who are adults and not running marathons and needing high-carb recovery meals, oatmeal isn't really the health food that we need in the morning. I'm Dr. Dan Monti. Until next time, be well.